There's no doubt that the Orlando Magic are doing a lot right lately. They've definitely been making the right decisions, from Rookie of the Month Paolo Banchero all the way to sophomore standout Franz Wagner. They have their two guys, but they might have made the wrong decision in letting Donovan Mitchell go. If you want to know all the details, stick with us. Anyway, let's get right into it. First things first, is Donovan Mitchell the one that got away? Like we said before, there's hardly any doubt that the Orlando Magic isn't moving in the right direction. In Paolo Banchero, who got the title for the Rookie of the Month, as well as in the sophomore standout Franz Wagner, they definitely have their two guys. Not to mention, the team also has the brilliant center Wendell Carter, as well as the intelligent guard Markelle Fultz. And let's not forget the intriguing and extremely talented Bol Bol, all three of which make a core of young players that literally any team would be lucky to have. It's been pretty heavily implied that the Orlando Magic are going to start making some serious roster moves in the near future. That is, they might even start to get into the business of trading for stars. After all, big-time free agents don't typically choose to sign to play in Orlando. Still, everyone is really excited to see the team finally shed that rebuilding and development label they've been carrying for so long and finally return to a winning team. And if we're all honest, players make the culture rather than the other way around. In more ways than one, it's really hard to turn down star quality talent just like that. Unfortunately, for Orlando, that is exactly where the team found themselves this offseason, as they judged whether to chase after Donovan Mitchell or speed up their rebuilding. After a bit of thought and discussion, they decided to stay patient in the end. But the idea still lingers. Did they just make a huge mistake? Next up, Donovan Mitchell was the right guy at the wrong time. While passing up the opportunity to go after Donovan Mitchell was far from a hard pass, the truth is that the team really did need to expedite and complete their rebuilding strategy before finally going back to chasing after star players. So it's entirely possible that while the Cleveland Cavaliers guard Donovan Mitchell was definitely the right guy to chase, he just became available at the wrong time for the Orlando Magic. First, let's start off with what exactly the Cleveland Cavaliers gave the Utah Jazz so that they could get the All-Star in the first place. This is, by the way, an individual who recently put up no less than 71 points in a single game. They gave Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, Ochai Agbaji, the 2023 first-round pick, the 2026 pick swap, the 2027 first-round pick, the 2028 pick swap, and the 2029 first-round pick. Wow, that was definitely a mouthful. Now, while this definitely looks like a lot for one player on the surface, in reality, this is exactly the going rate for a player like Mitchell. Let's not forget that this is someone who has managed to average an impressive 29 points per game this season, while shooting a scorching 40.7% from deep on nearly 10 attempts per game. It's insane. Coming up, here is what the Orlando Magic should have gotten involved. Donovan Mitchell is still only 26 years old, so he's right in line with the age of the young core already in place to be their leader. Not to mention, he has been an all-star in the last 3 seasons, and that's not even it. Mitchell would have 2 more seasons even after this one, with a player option over in 2026 for the Magic to build a team around him. Now the Magic are in complete possession of all of their own picks, as well as a possibly valuable top 4 protected pick coming from the Chicago Bulls themselves this offseason, as part of the increasingly woeful Nikola Vucevic deal. Giving up 3 first-rounders as well as 2 pick swaps definitely hurts on paper. Like we said, it's a mouthful, but the truth is that if the Magic had Donovan Mitchell, they would have been entering a full-on win-now mode. And in theory at least, the team would have an indestructible core of Wagner, Banchero, and Mitchell that would have been insanely competitive for at least 5 years. Following up, the final verdict. To prove our point a little more, let's talk about Colin Sexton a little bit. The player was way more valuable than Cole Anthony when the deal was originally made. But is the same still true? It's actually a lot closer than it once was. Plus, Lauri Markkanen might even be an all-star himself this season. He's had a pretty excellent reclamation year after all. Now, both he and Ochai Agbaji would have been, at least when the deal was being made, closer in value to someone like Mo Bamba, Jonathan Isaac, and even Chuma Okeke. Jalen Suggs even could have been used in a potential trade. Not to mention RJ Hampton was sitting there too as yet another good and young prospect. The point of all of that, at some stage the Orlando Magic is going to have to cut ties with some of the younger players that they like so that they could give their rotation more order. And as awesome as it sounds to have Fultz, Suggs, Anthony, and Hampton all on the roster, the reality is that they all can't get big minutes. Who better than a real legitimate star who has already had big playoff moments like Mitchell to get back? The truth is that Mitchell absolutely, hands down, was the guy to get. And while it does seem like a missed opportunity, we can't really be too harsh on the Magic front office because they themselves didn't really know what they had in Wagner and Banchero. Mitchell was just the right guy at the wrong time. Moving on, the reason why 12 NBA teams passed up drafting Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Donovan Mitchell is definitely an absolute steal. So why did 12 whole NBA teams pass up the opportunity to draft the player? It's a legitimate question, and we've got some pretty legitimate answers for it. So let's get right into it. First, there were a lot of pretty valid concerns about Mitchell. For one, at 6 feet and 3 inches tall, he was actually pretty short to be an NBA shooting guard. He was also unlikely to play point guard. In college, he averaged only 2.7 assists per game in his final season. Worse is knowing that at the same time, his scoring credentials weren't that impressive either. In his final season at college, he averaged just 15.5 points per game on 46% shooting overall from a 2-point range and 25% from a 3-point range. There's actually an old saying about the draft in the NBA. If you're going to miss big. This pretty much means that if you're going to draft a guy based on his potential alone, he better be tall. And if a short guy hasn't managed to prove his value by the end of his college career, it's not very likely that he's going to get that much better in the NBA. In all honesty, Donovan Mitchell has outperformed all reasonable expectations for him in the NBA. The Jazz either did some pretty outstanding scouting on him, or maybe they just got lucky, or maybe it was a little bit of both. Now for it, no one could have known how good Mitchell would be. The biggest reason why Donovan Mitchell got passed up by 12 whole teams was that no one could really be sure how Mitchell would play in the NBA. After all, the truth is that teams always draft for what they need, and Mitchell wasn't so hyped coming out of college either. 5 players drafted ahead of him were forwards, 5 were point guards, and only 2 pure shooting guards were taken ahead of Donovan. Of course, that being said, it's pretty likely that the Pistons and Hornets regret their choices. No matter how much you might try to predict the future in advance, reality is always a little bit different. There are a lot of players who have amazing college careers, but then somehow can't make it in the NBA. And then there are also some guys who have good careers in NC21 and become legendary players. As for Donovan Mitchell, he literally broke rookie records set by the likes of Michael Jordan himself. So there's no doubt that his achievements have been extraordinary so far. The unfortunate part is that they also couldn't have been foreseen. It's pretty likely that at least 10 of those 12 teams who passed on him did it because he just wasn't the position they needed. After all, the 2 shooting guards that got chosen before Mitchell had slightly welled college careers. For example, Luke Kennard averaged just a few more points than Mitchell and also was 2 whole inches taller than him. And then Malik Monk was a total scoring machine at Kentucky and even broke the freshman single-game scoring record with 47 points. That could be totally plausible reasoning for those teams passing on Mitchell. In the end, it's a gamble the teams can never know for sure when drafting. Even Michael Jordan went 3rd in the draft. Finally, drafting is a gamble. So in the end, the reason why 12 NBA teams decided to pass up on drafting the obviously talented Donovan Mitchell is the same reason why Minnesota didn't draft Steph Curry, or why Portland decided to not draft Michael Jordan, except for a very few surefire future NBA stars like Tim Duncan, King James, KD, AD, or Magic. It's a pretty huge gamble when it comes to the draft. You can do all the homework and research you want, but in the end, you'll draft the player you think is the best fit for your team and just hope that he will turn into a Hall of Fame player and help your team win championships. And that's a wrap for this video. Do you think Donovan Mitchell is the one that got away for Orlando Magic? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.